And so for people like myself who've not watched much hockey this year, a lot of stuff going on, especially you got March Madness, basketball, football, baseball's coming back. All right. What should non-hockey fans know about what's happening in hockey so far this year?
All right. Well, so for starters, if you really want to go what's happening, like, very basics, the divisions and the conferences were totally switched up this year, which has kind of provided something very exciting. And they did this because hockey has Canadian teams. Well, there's issues with the borders, just like you guys are seeing with the Toronto Raptors having to play in Tampa, right?
Yeah.
So they basically said, in order to be able to do this and to help with travel, we have to split up our divisions this year based off of location. So there is a only Canadian division this year, which I know Canadian hockey fans love. Actually, a lot of hockey fans are pretty excited for this because a lot of people wondered before, like, why aren't just the Canadian teams in a division? So yeah, so it's called the North Vision. What's more fitting, like we the North. Yeah, the North Division. So that is all the Canadian teams. And then you have the West Division, which is most of the teams out on the West Coast. And then you have the East Division, which is essentially most of the teams on the East Coast. But we fell into like that weird area where they weren't really sure, like, okay, do we keep, because they had too many teams in the East. So they pulled us and even Nashville, even though I know Nashville's technically always been like the Central Division. They're still kind of from a like regional standpoint, like when you look at it, sometimes you want to push them over, and the Florida teams were kind of controversial too. So in order to kind of work it out so that teams weren't having to travel far, they put us, the two Florida teams, into the Central Division, and they pulled Dallas, who technically is normally West, into the Central Division as well. So the Canes are a part of the Central Division, which is like an ensemble of like these teams that have never really been in a division for a long time together. And so it's been fun, like at least for us, I can't speak for hockey fans in some of the other divisions who are stuck playing their same teams, but I can imagine it's fun for the Canadian division. I can imagine, it's been fun for us in the Central Division. I don't know the East and West because those are kind of the same teams that have always really played each other. But there's been a lot of excitement about facing new teams that you don't often get to see as much. Like Dallas, we only normally see twice in a season, and we're facing them 8 times this season. So that's the other kicker with this hockey season. You can only play inside your division. That's why they did it. So we don't see any other teams outside of the Central Division. We are playing every single team inside the Central 8 times. So it's like totally feels like playoff hockey as we've started to kind of get past the halfway mark, because we're playing these teams like 5-6 more times. And it's insane. So it's been really fun. It's been very different, but it's been really cool.
So no wonder Tom Wilson got so pissed off of that one guy.
Exactly.
Okay, that's the only thing I've heard about hockey this year is Tom Wilson clocked a guy and he's in trouble.
If there is not a headline that Tom Wilson has clocked a guy, then there's something wrong with this hockey season. So at least that makes us feel a little bit normal, because Tom Wilson is still Tom Wilson.
Has there been a lot of COVID issues amongst the players, or the guys been responsible?
Yeah, so we went through a wave. It's pretty much kind of what we saw during football season, right? Like each team goes through their wave, and then, they kind of like lock in, and a couple of the guys already had it. And so, knock on wood, we've been okay since our first wave that we had. We had a little bit of a stumble in the beginning of January where we had like 5 guys out. But since then we've been rocking and rolling, which has been great. So you try to argue, and this is the same in every league with every sport. Like if you're going to have it, you rather get the team have it over with at the beginning of the season, do they hit in the middle? And, you don't want to have it at all, but we're lucky we kind of did get to sweep it under the rug, and hopefully we continue to trend upwards.
So Dallas is in the Central Division for hockey, and they're in the NFC East for football. Because that makes sense for both, right?
How does that even work? I know.
I've always want to ask, because I've talked to a bunch of former Cowboys players, and I always want to be like, hey, you guys know you're in the wrong division, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to ask them that.
Who makes these things?
No, it's unbelievable. Any guys this year? I'm trying to think. Are there any guys this year that are kind of having like a breakout season? Maybe names we haven't heard before, or guys that maybe coming maybe a late career surge?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going Hurricanes, like, if you're talking just guys in general in the league, the Hurricanes are going to come up because they have been playing so well, and there are some names that have really emerged. The one in particular, and it's funny, a friend of mine who writes for The Athletic, she joked about this the other day, like, this is the guy that the Canadian teams finally realize he's a player in the league, at the end, because they're always in there. The Canadian teams are always so obsessed with the Connor McDavids of the world. They forget that the little guys exist. So Marty Necas, he's a player for the Hurricanes that he's 22 years old. He's in his second season with the NHL team, but he was drafted in 2017. So he played at the AHL level for a year. Okay. And we were talking to him the other day, and he was like, he literally said these words: I was pissed off that I had to play at the minor league level, at the AHL level for a year, but that gave him the motivation and confidence to be able to play once he got moved up to the NHL clubs. So he's just been on fire. He's capturing and turning heads of a lot of people in this league. And the Hurricanes in general have had a younger team, but it's a younger team that now has 2 seasons of playoff experience under their belts. So, if the Hurricanes make a run and make it to the Cup final, it should be no surprise for anybody. So I'm trying to think of like other teams of some young players that have really emerged. It's so hard because we're like so engulfed in just the Central Division. Yeah. It's like, what else is happening outside? I think the Florida Panthers are like the team that just kind of came out of nowhere. For the last few years, they've struggled. They went through a coaching change, and they have some extremely strong talent on that team that is really just emerging this season. And I think it just kind of came out of left field. Their head coach is Joe Quenneville, who has a great reputation as a head coach in the National Hockey League. And so I think people knew when he took over that they would be in good hands, but we didn't expect to see them at the top of the league right now. The Canes are, but it's been a different season, an unexpected season, but it's been fun.
Do you think because they have all the different divisions just geographically, once playoffs come, like you're just going to be like, okay, so this team's maybe a lower seeded team that maybe was in a tougher division is just going to smoke somebody that had it easy?
Yeah, that's what's going to be really interesting, right? Because like when we were in, normal life, our central or our metro division, our original division, was always one of the more competitive divisions, but you got thrown into playing, other teams, and you got your experience against the Boston Bruins, who we ended up losing to, twice in the playoffs. And so I think it's a really great point that you bring up, because you're not even getting a taste of what the other divisions have to offer. Like and not to mention you haven't played some of those teams in over a year, almost even, a year and a half for some of the teams that you saw early last season. So I think that's going to be a really interesting topic and storyline come the conference finals, and which I don't even think they're technically called the conference finals because we don't have conferences. But come the 2 finals games, the last 2 rounds, when you are playing these teams outside of your division. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
So the guys are all in their home cities, and they're just traveling in between 3 other cities besides their okay.
Yeah. So there's how many teams are in each division?
There's an odd number of teams in hockey, right? I always thought that was bizarre.
6? What's that?
There's an odd number of teams in hockey, right?
There's 31 now. There used to be 30 because they just added Seattle, but Seattle's not technically playing.
Okay.
Or wait, maybe yeah, that's right, 31.
The Krakens, I know that.
The Seattle Kraken. Yeah.
I don't know how you have odd numbers. That's wild to me, but yeah.
Yeah, so technically right now we're even because
okay.
Since we have 30, the Kraken haven't technically started playing yet. I think that's right. Now I'm second guessing myself. No, that's definitely right. Seattle Kraken.
I think you're right. Yeah.
They start this next season because we have the expansion draft coming.
Oh, cool. Somewhere. And then so with the Caps, since I'm here in DC, I feel like every season, like they're a little bit down, then they're like one of the best teams in hockey, and then aside from a couple of years ago, they just kind of fall off in the playoffs. Is that going to happen again?
I hope so, because we don't like playing the Capitals. No, the Capitals, it's so fun because the last couple of years we've kind of like, that goes back to like how they realigned the divisions this year. There's good and bad. The good is we get to see some different teams. The also good is I guess we don't have to deal with, teams like the Bruins and the Capitals that we've mounted these postseason rivalry with. But then the bad is you don't get to see the Bruins and the those rivalries are fun, right? Especially when they start to marinate over the last couple of years. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that we don't have to see them again. But at the same time, we have had our success against the Capitals recently. So I could go either way.
And I know Tampa Bay won it last year. Did they look like they're going to repeat?
They are in our division, and so that's what's, they're the team that we're struggling against right now. The Hurricanes have 7 losses. 3 of those are from Tampa Bay. So that's the team that we need to remind ourselves, like, we're going to have to beat them in the regular season to be able to make the run that we need to in the postseason against them, because they're no joke. I mean, they're doing exactly what it's the same guys from last season. It's the guys that won the cup. They know how to do it. And especially in this COVID world, I think that's the big thing that a lot of people forget. Like, and I remember, like, Rod Brindamore was always saying that when the teams were in the bubble for the playoffs, it was more of a mental game versus a physical game. And the teams that kind of made it towards the end were the ones that mentally were still checked in. Like, it's so easily to mentally check out when you're in a bubble environment like that. Hopefully, and I don't think this is the case, there's still, the details still have to come out. I don't think they would do a bubble again this year, but it's still a season that's mentally taxing on you because of the amount of games and the protocols and not seeing family. And so it's going to be another one of those seasons where you have to be a mentally tough team to be able to make it and eventually win the cup. And so, obviously Tampa has been through that and they have that experience. So, they can take that and use that as an advantage.
Well, also Florida's in 2025 and their pandemic's over, so they're pretty much good on that.
Right? I know. Yeah, that's true. I guess their protocols are a little different down there.
There's some, once you get there, you're automatically 5 years ahead.
Yeah.
And then you brought up about the Canadian teams as kind of like the border issue. What are they going to do for the playoffs, assuming there's going to be Canadian teams playing American teams?
I think that's why there still hasn't been anything official that's really come out as far as what the playoffs look like, because I think that's something that they're still working out. A part of me wonders if there's a scenario where they all have to come down to the States and basically quarantine before the playoffs, and then they'll kind of bubble themselves or, whatever until they can play the other teams. That's going to be something that's really interesting, and we'll all be on the lookout to watch. Because it doesn't seem like Canada's really eased a ton of restrictions, and I know the border situation is still pretty much the same. So that's been the tough part too, with like trades and the trade deadline's coming up. So like that's been a big thing with the trade deadline. Like, teams are probably going to start making moves sooner than later because guys have to quarantine once they get to the team if they had to travel like via airplane and stuff. And so you don't want to acquire a guy to make a playoff run and then he have to sit out for 2 weeks. Like, what's the point in that, So, everything has like a strategy behind it this season, which is, really interesting.
I have a question. If I handed you a blank map of Canada, could you point out each city that is a Canadian NHL team?
I think I can now. Yeah. So like we can like pretend like this is a map.
Yeah.
So you have like Toronto, I know is like obviously straight up from New York. You can get there. And then it goes Montreal is like the next closest to Toronto, I think. It goes Toronto, Montreal, and then Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Vancouver are like all over here.
You could offer me $500,000 to find Edmonton on the map, and you'd keep your money.
In my defense, I haven't traveled yet with the team. It's my first season doing this, and we're all at home. So at least I haven't like been there and had to like figure out where they were. So
no, because I know somebody posted a couple weeks ago on Twitter. They were like, "Hey, if I handed you a blank map of the United States and I gave you $1 million for every state you could correctly identify, but if you got to finish. So if you can get one for everyone you can get, but if you get one wrong, you get no money. How many could you get?" And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Nobody knows. I could probably do 20. I get the coasts. I can get the coast.
Right?
Canada, no chance.
Yeah, no shot.
No, when you said Montreal is next to Toronto, I thought Montreal. I get them in Vancouver. Them in Vancouver are always mixed up.
I might be wrong, but Vancouver is really far west, so I think Montreal is more east than.
Okay, I think because Vancouver's sort of near Seattle. I have no idea. Canada's like a different world to me.
I know.